Welcome to Market Buzz. I'm Greg Schnell, the Canadian technician and host of the Market Buzz. Each show, we do a deep dive into different industries using weekly charts to see what is happening on a long time frame basis. Please subscribe to me on Twitter at Schnell Investor, and you can also find my blogs on gregschnell.com as well as StockCharts.com. So, market continues to try and push a little bit higher here. Every day's just kind of inching forward. So we're going to talk a little bit, though, about what's going on in the background. And a few weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I put out a chart list of a bunch of Chinese-related stocks and said, let's watch these to start to see how they turn. So when I went through them this week, they're starting to turn up already. So even in the middle of all of the news we see about the virus and whether or not the count is right and whatever, investors are already pushing forward on this front. And I think it's an important place to watch. But we got a couple of other things I want to cover off today as well. So I did the marijuana review on Wednesday and mentioned that the charts, they still were in downtrends, but there were a few that were starting to set up, and it was all about being prepared for any sort of turn. And again, one of the things about the marijuana industry is smoking was legalized, or recreational marijuana was legalized in Canada a year and a half ago, and then 4 months ago they legalized edibles. And so one of the things that happens out of that, obviously, is now that there's a legal market to do all the drug development and all of the product testing and that kind of stuff, that it's expanding. And again, in the US, we don't expect federal legalization of that anytime soon, but on a state-by-state basis, it seems to be rolling forward. So Canopy Growth came out with new earnings this week or last night. And as they came out, it pushes the stock up to an interesting level. And again, it's the biggest one of all of them, and mostly because of the interest by Constellation Brands. So anyway, so a little bit of a chart focus there. China stocks are starting to break out, and there's actually some hitting new highs here on the news. So a few shipping stocks turn up, nothing great, but at least they're not making lower lows. Some of them have actually made higher highs than last week. And oil stocks stabilize on higher crude prices. So let's check the charts. Oh, that's not the charts. Okay, let me just do that differently. There we go. Okay, so here we have the Dow for the last day or so, and it's just gently rolling over, not really too much price action. Again, this is my 10 different things on a vertical setup here, and you can see the VIX has just been grinding sideways since Tuesday, roughly. This is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and price hasn't done much since then either. So just working its way, you can see momentum is kind of waning here, not much going on. And then here is the NASDAQ composite. It's gone sideways for 3 days. Here's the IWM gently pushing higher here. Nothing really newsworthy. Canada, the same thing, sideways. So while the market, notched a higher high yesterday, it just, is sitting sideways, I think it's fair to say. And then looking at natural gas is one that I really want to keep an eye on. And the reason for that is it's near 20-year lows. And if it was to start to bounce here, that would be a really nice long entry, either for natural gas itself or natural gas related products. Commodities don't usually go to zero. So what we would expect is that if it was going to start turning up here, then at least you're in near the lows and you could set your stop relatively tight. USO, which is the oil and gas business. You can see oil broke out to a new 2-week high this week and is trying to hold that right now. And gold is up near its 2-week high. So things are working that way. And then we have TLT, which when TLT is rising, you're looking for bond safety. So this is getting close to 2-week highs again. And the US dollar's just been flat for roughly the last 2 days. Okay, jumping. Well, let me cover off the marijuana names because I only wanted to do 2 stocks in here. But this is the inverse ETF for marijuana stocks. And I mentioned it was in an uptrend, gap down, and now basically climbing up and trying to retest the highs. Now it's gapping down again. This is the type of price action that we would expect to see. If it was just starting to roll over here in momentum, which clearly with this kind of a drop that could be, as it rolls over here, that's a pretty important inflection point on the chart. And here's Canopy Growth. So again, it had already turned up its 10-week moving average. It was trying to work its way higher. And now with the big move today, so it's up 16% this week, which gives you an outside bar on last week, right? So you have a lower low and a higher high, but you're closing up near the top of the bar. That's pretty bullish to get that sort of price action. That was what we saw back here on the lows. And so as Canopy tries to break out of this range here, it's also fighting this big downtrend. And there's a momentum downtrend here as well on the PPO. And if that was going to start to break out to the upside, I think that would be the positive confirmation I'd be looking for, and some of the other names in the space. Now, I just want to go over here. Let me just jump to the bottom of the page and work my way up from the bottom. Here is Organogram, and one of the reasons I want to show this one is because it had broken clearly above the downtrend line, pulled back, and is sitting right at a horizontal 10-week. You can see the PPO is starting to turn up here. Price basis, cost basis is around $3. But the main point on this chart here is you're starting to see, Canopy, this one starting to turn, and that was the idea behind trying to look at them the other day. There's a few other names that are interesting in the space. If you go back to Wednesday's video, I covered them all off. So hopefully there's some information for you there. But if you're a believer that those edibles are going to make a big difference in the healthcare and in the recreational area, then perhaps some of those names are for you. Okay, so let's quickly flip through the China stocks, because one of the things I'm seeing on these China names, I'm actually surprised at how well they're performing already. So this is China Mobile, and it had a push up and then down for 2 weeks, and now it's trying to build an inside bar. That's typically what we see in terms of a reversal. So we're starting to see indecision where it's narrowing the range, and now does it break down or up? And we'll keep watching on that particular chart. This China Telecom seems to be breaking the downtrend in momentum this week if we were to draw a line across here, and price is just hobbling around a horizontal 10-week moving average. So what we want to watch for here is that can it start to push higher. This is the Casino Melco Resorts, so they're out in the Macau area, and what you see here is this is starting to turn up here, making higher highs and higher lows for the last 2 weeks. That's the typical price action that we'd want to watch for to start seeing return to an uptrend. NetEase is very close here at 350 to breaking out to new all-time highs. So this is looking pretty impressive, actually. And look at how the coronavirus infected them, hardly at all. So the stock looks pretty good. Tencent Holdings, this one's starting to break out of a new out of a base here. So it's hitting new 52-week highs again today. WUBA pullback, nothing really interesting yet. It is making higher highs and higher lows for the last 2 weeks in the lower part of the range right now. YY, this is just sideways trending, probably a break above 70 would get me more interested. Alibaba continues to report great numbers, but the stock hasn't been able to break out yet here. We're trying to get above this 210, 211 area. We're sitting at 220. Horizontally working. So I would consider this a breakout, and we're just sitting here, maybe even catching, a bunch of new institutional buyers holding up the stock, and it's ready to pop to the upside, would be my guess. TL Education Group, this one had broken out, making new 52-week highs again, so that's twice I've said that. VipShop Holdings, this one's already started to turn back up here, so that looks okay. China Petroleum, just higher lows and higher highs this week, holding that low. New Oriental Education, very close to new 52-week highs. Momo, not very close to highs. Sino is still sideways in here for 8 months. Momentum trying to improve, but this chart in general looks broken, so I don't think we can blame that on anything else other than just the downtrend it was in. Weibo is interesting here for me because of this big 3-year downtrend in momentum. And if it was to start to finally turn up, this was a growth stock from $8 to $142. So you got to think they've got something going on. It's sitting down around 40 with both the moving averages right there. So I'd like to see this one try to break out a little bit here. And, it wouldn't take much to get above $55 and all of a sudden it's at 9-month highs or something. So if the momentum downtrend starts to break here, I'd be more interested. Auto home, sideways, nothing really going on there. JD.com, new 52-week high. That's the third one. Baidu, very close to new 6-month highs. Again, trending higher, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. PPO just turning above zero for the first time in a year and a half. You have to like that. I mean, all of a sudden, if this thing starts to crank it up, it's pretty good. China Internet ETF, very close to 52-week highs. So look at the volume come in here. I mean, the last 2 weeks, this thing has shot right up. So pretty impressive. Baozun, this one continues to deteriorate. Not really on my interest list at this point. Chengyu, so consolidating sideways. Don't know if that's a merger, buyout, whatever. That's very quiet trading. HUYA IPO'd, and since it came down to retest the lows here and is starting to take off to the upside. So I really like that. This is a big move this week, up 10%. Wouldn't take much. So I'm thinking, you have a new IPO'd stock. You've gone down, you broke through support here, probably got rid of any weak hands holding. Now with the coronavirus, you've double tested the bottom, and now you want to take off to the upside. That looks very bullish to me, so I'm quite interested in that one. Here's IQ is the ticker symbol, and what you see is 9 or 10-month highs here, clearly pushing up and away, but well above January's prior highs. Have to like that. That's just bullish. Aurora Mobile, nothing going on there. Lex FinTech, this is pretty choppy, still hasn't started to reverse to the upside. Pinduoduo, this one's putting in a higher low, higher high this week, trying to move above the 10-week moving average. Again, it IPO'd. In general, there's an uptrend there, so if this is the new low and you're starting to build a base out of here, that would be a nice place to get on board, because it's above the, I'll call it the consolidation level, around 32, comes back, checks it, and takes off to the upside. That's pretty nice. Hudan, this one doesn't look like it's ready for an uptrend. S-Fund, media agency, still sideways. I'd ignore it. And then Sogu, I'd ignore it. It's trying to hold here after IPO down for 18 months, rolling over. Maybe it makes a higher low here and starts to build a base. If so, I wouldn't let it get much below $4. Just a couple more. 10-cent music, I really like this one. Trying to build the base in here, and it wouldn't take much. If it gets above $14.75, call it $15. Anything above that, I think that's the kind of, you see an IPO run up, pull back, make a base, and then start to break out. This is very close here. If you're full stochastic, can start to resume higher. So some of these are looking pretty interesting. Here's the China Technology Fund. Hasn't quite broken out. There's a downtrend here. If that starts to fix, wouldn't take much. I'm a little worried about today's candle on that stock, or on that ETF, where we open, test higher, and so far we're down near the low. So maybe some selling coming into the name. But the reason I want to go through these is to put them on your radar, that they're starting to break out. Here's another one, Dakao, New Energy, probably in the environmental, social, governance investing theme. DQ is taken off to the upside, new 52-week highs. Jinko Solar, new 52-week highs. So these are pretty nice. And Luckin Coffee, this one's interesting. Again, IPO'd, big push up and pulling back right now. Might take them a few months to get through this, the virus situation. But that stock looks very well set up to be a Starbucks of the future. And here's Q Tao. This one has made its IPO base and is starting to turn higher here. I like it right here, right now. So anyway, I think all of those names are quite nice. We're going to take a quick 20-second break here to check out Dave Landry's show, and then we'll be right back. Okay, this is Ardmore Shipping. So we're going to go over to those marine stocks. And the reason I want to keep track of those is when they start to improve, we should be starting to see some improvement in freight movement. Obviously, one of the big risks we have here with the situation is that we end up losing supply chain links, and companies that would normally make parts can't ship them. And so even if they could make them, they can't ship them. And if we can get both of those legs starting to work, then this is going to start to turn up. So we want to watch the shipping stocks for this. Here's an outside reversal. Stock makes a lower low, breaks below this prior low, comes down and tests the main low of this area, and now starting to reverse higher. Look at this move up here, 17%. So that's pretty sweet. Here's the dry bulk shipping ETF trying to hold down here. Again, look at the volume coming in. This is a relatively new ETF, but it's very volatile. So if you like big reversals, this one's probably set up very nicely to go from $9 to 22. That's kind of that would be a big swing. Braemar Shipping Services, this one's still pushing down, so no need to jump on that performance yet. Diamond Shipping, this one coming down here, another trying to make a lower low, didn't quite make a higher high, so still in a downtrend, but let's call it stabilizing from last week. Diana Shipping, this one's already pushing above to new 3-week highs and a higher low, higher high, and pushing back up. Still below the 10-week, but you can see the downtrend line here under threat. Full stochastic starting to give us a buy signal, and the PPO still a ways away from that buy signal. And that one's a fairly well-known name in the shipping, so it's a pretty interesting stock to watch. It did pull back almost 50%, so quite a big move. Eagle Bulk Shipping, this one hasn't started to improve. Genco Shipping and Trading, not much action there. Grindrod, still trying to base here. Global Ship Lease, nothing going on there. This Cheniere Energy, this one's just getting hurt really bad with both the low natural gas prices and then the fact that the tankers aren't moving. So that really is hitting it. It's near 3-year lows. If we just click out of this one here for a second and just wind out the tape on it. You know, we've just kind of migrated sideways. It hasn't done much, but again, we're starting to make, 52-week lows here on this. So this is kind of an important level for the stock to start to hold. If this can start to turn up higher, I'd be much more interested if it can break this 2-year downtrend in momentum. Hasn't done that yet. So continue to watch it, but again, starting to roll over here, which is very interesting, especially based on the low natural gas price that I mentioned earlier. Nordic American Tanker Shipping, this thing's breaking out to new highs. Back in September, October, rallied up, pulled back, and now you're getting a chance to buy it on the base breakout. That's probably as good as you get. You set your stop at $3, and if it holds it, great, and if it can't hold it, let it go to somebody else's hands. Paragon Shipping, nothing to look at there. Invesco Shipping ETF called C. This is trying to hold near the lows, $8 to $10. That was a 20% pullback. So again, interesting place to look. Ship Finance International, this is trying to hold the 40-week moving average after breaking out to new highs in the fall. Pulling back here, and if all of a sudden you start to get an upturn right above zero, this is a nice place on the chart. I would say it's not a very volatile stock. It's relatively small volatility, but nice yield at 5%. So that's interesting, and the fact that it held up pretty well. Sino Global Shipping just continues to drift lower. This box ships is putting up a second week in a row of moving higher, but again, it's been split down so many times here. This was a 1-for-50 split, so that's why the stock price looks so sad. TK LNG Partners, still nothing on the LNG side, but this TK Corp chart, I like this one, coming down to hold at the base. Outside reversal bar this week, PPO near zero after going higher than it's been for the last couple of years. So something interesting there. And the next one, TK's got a couple of different ones, but this TK Tankers, again, here's that $10 level. Stock runs up, pulls back to $15, trying to hold at the 40-week moving average this week. If you can start to get a higher high next week and a higher high on the prior high on the prior week, so up either a 2-week high or a 3-week high. I think that's a pretty nice place to try and pick this up and keep your stop relatively tight. Again, it was just starting to surge out of here. And if we have phase one of the trade agreement behind us, this should be an opportunity to get on board. Whether or not it will be is an interesting question, but I'd wait for the breakout. So those two areas of the market that we covered off, I think we want to keep watching them. One of the things I'm surprised at is that the market isn't more worried about the supply chain disruption, because I think, you know, if you don't have iPhones, it's hard to sell them. Anyway, when we look at the indexes here, this sideways migration, well, it isn't that bullish. I will say that my breadth indicators are positive, but not very positive. So if I went and looked at, say, you know, big moves up this week on the back of the reversal, it's subpar. It's just kind of blah, rather than a big kind of initiation thrust back to new highs. So I'm somewhat torn that we don't seem to have the push that I was expecting in these in the markets once the China thing is behind us. So to see these China stocks start to turn up, and yet the market not do much, agreed it is up from last Friday. You might remember on the Friday before, we had the down 600 day on the Dow Jones Industrial. Then we rallied up for a week. And now we basically broke above that high in one day. And all of a sudden, we're kind of just sideways. So I would say the momentum is quiet, not great, but we're still trying to push through. Okay. So I covered off those three areas. And I also mentioned the oils at the beginning. And the reason I want to cover off the oils, again, they're so beaten down. To watch for a turn in these names is pretty important. So oil's trying to push up today. Oh, let's go for something with a little different price pattern. We're not seeing much movement over here, even though oil was gapping up today. And I think the bigger concern, that's probably fair, the bigger concern for all of these names is, you know, what's it going to take to keep them working their way higher? So in this case, Apache's broken the downtrend. It's pushed above, and our PPO is above zero, and one of the highest levels, let me just extend this out, one of the highest levels in a few years going back on the PPO. Now again, big downtrend here, and look at this sudden kick here. So if this is going to start to work its way higher, this would be an important reversal on the chart. When we look at Chevron, whoops, would be good if I typed in all three letters, CVX. Again, this one looks to me like it's already made its base. It's broken support here, came down, and is now making new 3-week highs and trying to reverse. So I like that. The full stochastic's giving us a buy signal. When we look at BP, it's just holding in here, looking at FANG, which is Diamondback Energy, trying to hold the prior lows from November. Pretty interesting place on the chart. Again, you got a big downtrend in momentum here, and if this was to start reversing, this is the kind of place you'd like to get it. This is a 30% pullback off the highs, or 25%. Pretty nice opportunity if this is in fact where the lows are holding. So we're trying to hold this $73 low, currently trading at 74. I don't think I'd let it get below 71. But you want to pick a level just below here, and if we're going to start getting crude stabilizing, that would really, really help. Looking at some of the other big names out there, ConocoPhillips, this one's starting to make higher highs and higher lows this week, and again, OPEC has stepped in. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago that one of the things we're looking for is when the investment community knows the government is doing everything they can to try and stop the issues around the virus, that the market will try to rally. So last week, we clearly had one of those. This week, we've pushed up some. Hasn't been a big move up this week. Well, let's just go see on a weekly basis. NASDAQ, the biggest mover's up 2%. No, that's still okay. SPX, is up 1.5%. So it's still all right. But again, just kind of trying to break out above this, I'll call it coronavirus, doesn't even show up when you're getting 100 billion a month from the Fed. Anyway, the main perspective on this is that we want to start to see this work. Again, we got the trade deal. So if this is a left shoulder head and now a right shoulder, and this starts to take off to the upside, this is a pretty interesting area. Royal Dutch Shell had really kind of bombed out here below support, and it's trying to hold in here. This is one of the majors that's been trying to do, has been, I'll call it, more focused on less carbon intensive drilling and oil reservoirs. Their yield is now 7.5%. So this is absolutely huge. And we're trying to hold support from the December 2018 lows at $50. I realize we're below it. We're trying to stabilize in that $50 area. We'll see if it starts to turn up here, if it can or if it can't. Some of the Canadian names have been looking better, and I've mentioned this a while ago. CNQ is now Canada's largest, and it's making higher highs and higher lows again this week. It's on 2 weeks of that. Suncor has put in a nice reversal this morning or this week from going lower this week to try and push back up. They wrote off some assets based on low oil prices. So with that, we're seeing them starting to roll down here. Again, what I'm watching for is, do all of these start to turn up? Because there is starting to be some improvement in egress and access for the Canadian oil parts. Some other things to look at. So we had the semiconductors had started to drift away. They're trying to break out to new higher highs here, and I would definitely like to see that. So this is impressing me that there's some leadership here coming back into the semiconductors. Hasn't quite broken out to new relative strength highs here, which I would like. I'd like it to kind of start outperforming the S&P 500. So we're up here at the prior high level, just watching to make sure. But again, we got great numbers from NVIDIA this morning. They jumped up, and Cisco was one of the stocks that moved earlier in the week down the opposite way. AMD has been working its way higher. So some of the tech names are starting to get mixed pictures. I thought this Cisco breakout might hold. It obviously didn't. So as we're working through trying to, I'll call it, absorb the COVID-19 virus, I think is what they want to call it now. As we're starting to work our way through that period, I'm really interested to see if the market can continue to push higher. And I'm not convinced with the data, but my momentum data definitely improved this week. It was still more advancers than decliners, and I had more upside showing up. But on the charts here, let's just go get this one. On this advanced decline line, what you can see here so far is we've got a lower high as price goes higher in price. So we have this negative divergence so far. Nothing wrong with it pulling back and then taking back off to the upside. So try and keep your mind focused on whether or not we have the power to keep rising, because I think that's an important question. I did write an article this week about Microsoft follows Tesla onto the arc, and what I meant by the arc was the relative strength momentum has just gone ballistic for a mega cap stock like Microsoft. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to join me on Market Buzz. Market Buzz airs Wednesdays and Fridays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. You can also see the recording on StockChartsTV YouTube page. You'll find both my US and Canadian market reviews on the StockCharts YouTube page as well. So with that, have a good weekend. Stay safe, everybody, and trade well. Thanks.